My name is Rachel Rofe. I created this show because I wanted to help you see that if you have a choice, you can choose a better life. If you're listening to this podcast, you're in a pretty fortunate position. You have free will, ability to connect to the internet, and access to all kinds of new education. This podcast is meant to help you make the most of your good fortune. We talk with all kinds of people here from all walks of life because I want you to see that no matter what your situation, there's always a way to create a life that you're proud of. Hello. Today's episode is with Jordan Harbinger, and Jordan has a ~1 podcast in business. It used to be in self-help, but he just switched over, called The Art of Charm. And he has created a multi seven-figure business teaching people how to become more charismatic. He is a super smart guy. He has spent several years abroad in Europe and the developing world. He speaks several languages. He's worked for various governments and NGOs overseas. He's traveled through war zones. He's been kidnapped twice in 2 different countries, and he says that the reason that he's alive and kicking still is because of his ability to talk his way into and out of any situation. So in this podcast, we didn't cover the kidnapping so much because he does have a podcast episode all about it, and I wanted you to get some new information. But in the episode, we talked about how you can become more charismatic, different action steps that you can take, and different rituals that you can start implementing. We talked about nonverbal communication, why that's so important, how you can create a really great first impression. We talked about what if people don't like you, about networking, and what to do if networking exhausts you. He talked about introverts versus extroverts and how he feels about all of that as far as networking. And then we also went into some of his time management techniques, and we went over a bunch of different things. I thought it was a great episode, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you think about it. So give it a listen, and then please let me know your comments on Twitter, rachelrofe.com, whatever it is. All right, enjoy. So Jordan, thank you so much for being here. This is going to be real fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. So the intention behind A Better Life is to show people that if they have a choice, that they can choose a better life. So in that spirit, can you take a minute to share with us some of the things that you're most proud of in your life?
Yeah, sure. So I quit working on Wall Street, started a company that's really successful, and I have a really successful podcast. Yeah, I speak 5 languages. I don't know. You're kind of catching me off guard, but I would say those are the things that come to mind at first.
Awesome. So your podcast, The Art of Charm, is spectacular, and I know you teach a ton about charisma and just feeling confident. And I know for you, you didn't start out feeling super confident. And one of the things, just to give people perspective on where you came from to where you are now, I heard an interview with you where you were sharing about a girl who asked you to a Sadie Hawkins dance. Can you let people know about that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was so shy in high school that some girl, I don't know what she was thinking either, but she was probably equally just throwing a Hail Mary. She asked me to go to Sadie Hawkins, which is a dance where the girls ask the guys, and I was so taken aback by her asking me that I actually just sat down in my chair and didn't say anything. And everyone's like chanting and stuff, and I was so embarrassed that I slunk down so nobody could hear or see me, and I just turned red. And I said nothing, and so she just stood there, just rejected. It was terrible.
Aww.
I felt so bad. I still feel bad, but I mean, it was just like the worst thing you could do. Why would you ask like that? And I mean, I don't know. I feel bad for her, but at the time, I felt bad for myself too.
Yeah, of course, both of you. It's just not a cool situation to be in. So since then, you've obviously become super charismatic, and I have some questions about that, but first, can you define what charisma means to you?
Charisma essentially is personal magnetism, getting people to like and trust you, I would say, and being able to interact with people who are very different from you relatively easily. And that is a potent set of learnable skills. So it's not something that people are born with. A lot of people think that, but that's part blend of a convenient excuse plus not knowing how it works. So it's kind of like, oh, well, the earth is flat because it looks flat, or, there's a multitude of other things that we explain in ways that are far-fetched just because we don't understand them, and charisma and personal magnetism falls into that bucket.
So one thing I've been curious about, so from you to go through the Sadie Hawkins dance thing to where you are now, I know now there's a lot of training around charisma. I know there's the whole pickup industry, which you're not like, but there was that. But how did you learn how to become charismatic?
Well, I used to work on Wall Street, and I had this mentor, quote unquote, named Dave, and he was never in the office. He never billed any hours, and he essentially was just never around. And I thought, how is this guy surviving? So I also was conflicted because the rumors around the office were that Dave made more money than everyone else. And so from that experience, I realized, like, well, wait a minute, there's something that's not working here. So once Dave finally took me out for coffee and said, like, ask me anything, because he was supposed to be keeping an eye on me during my summer internship on Wall Street, I said, how come, and I didn't care about the job at all. I didn't even want it at that point. And I said, how come you make more money than everybody else, but you're never in the office? If being a lawyer is all about billable hours, how come you're never here? And he proceeded to explain to me that he was bringing in business for the firm. His job was essentially to go out, create relationships, and bring deals back to the firm. And that was kind of mind-blowing because he wasn't even meeting his minimum billable hourly requirements. And so I didn't quite understand how you could not meet minimum billable hourly requirements and still stay employed at a firm, let alone be one of the partners and let alone make more money than other folks. And he told me that his commissions for bringing in deals were so high, and he kept renegotiating them all the time because the firm couldn't afford to lose him, and he leveraged that. And I thought, wait a second. So I've seen lawyers here at 1 a.m. on a Saturday, and you're not even here at 1 p.m. on a Wednesday, yet you make more money than everyone else. I just don't get it. And it turned out that the people skills were the differentiator. And so I set about learning how to convince people to work with me, like, trust me, body language, social dynamics, networking, and trust and rapport as much as I can, because there's always going to be somebody that's going to outwork you. There's always going to be somebody who's more highly technically skilled, but people who have great relationships are always going to be the people that dominate. And that's been true for me in business. It's been true for me in every industry that I've ever worked in. And so far, every successful person that I do meet has the exact same mindset. So it's almost like this secret that's not kept secret on purpose. It's just that a lot of people think you're born into a network or that you develop this stuff in the womb and then everybody else is just screwed.
Yeah, that's a great point. So how did you learn about this stuff? What did you do?
Well, I started to read books and things like that, of course, but I realized quickly that that wasn't going to be sufficient because there are books out there, even good ones like The Charisma Myth by Olivia Fox-Cabane and How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie and things like that. But what these books, as amazing as they are, especially in the times that they were written, what they lack is the nuance that you can only get through coaching. And that's the reason that, looking back, of course, Dale Carnegie's not around anymore. There's classes that offer coaching in this area, but they're kind of, unfortunately, to use the phrase dumbed down, but dumbed down to the lowest common denominator so that corporations can send through 300 people and they can make money that way. But if you look at Olivia Fox-Cabane, who wrote The Charisma Myth, the coaching that she offers is something like 6 figures for, heads of state. And then there's companies like us at The Art of Charm where guys come in and live for a week, take a week-long residential program. We work on nonverbal communication, body language, and things like that. So I started learning through books and then quickly realized that that wasn't going to do it. So I started going out on my own every day without any friends, without any safety net, and tried to create connections and network. And it was really, really hard. But through that process, I did that every day for over a year. I met up with my now business partner, AJ, and we started running social experiments. And the results of those experiments that we ran 10 years ago and everything we've been doing for the past decade is what now makes up the curriculum at The Art of Charm.
So as you were learning about all these different things and doing your social experiments, how were the people that you were friends with before you started all these experiments? How were they reacting to you?
As I was doing these experiments, I actually made a conscious decision to not hang out with the same people. And it wasn't like, oh, my old friends suck, I'm getting rid of them. It was more like, all right, if I don't burn the ships, I'm just going to end up hanging with the same people, which is going to be my convenient excuse to not try to create new relationships. It's hard if you go out with the same people every time to be like, I'm going to run around and make new friends right now. That doesn't really happen for you. If you do burn the ships, if you do want to get this handled and you start going out alone, you start to realize how tough this is. Some of my friends were like, this is a great idea. Oh my gosh, I can't believe you have the balls to do this. This is going to be amazing for you when you finally figured it out. And other people were like, you don't need that. You're already cool. And other people were like, yeah, that's dumb. So there was really sort of a stratum or strata, to use the Latin plural there, of people that thought about it in certain ways. And I quickly realized, and one of the things that anybody who's improving has to keep in mind, is that there's always going to be people that think that what you're doing is stupid. And the people that really care about you are going to tell you one of two, which is that's going to be great for you, or you don't need that because they truly believe that you don't because they already like you the way you are. And the people who think, oh, that's stupid, usually it's subconscious, but usually the reason is because you're highlighting something in them that they find to be a massive insecurity of their own. So it's like, you meet somebody who's wealthy. Oh, yeah, well, when you have all that money, you can't appreciate life. All right, I've been poor and I've been rich, and I'll tell you, one's better than the other. There's really no ifs, ands, or buts around it. There's no getting around it. Rationalize it all you want. But people like that who try to bring you down for doing something like that, those are people to be avoided, and sometimes it's really tough because sometimes those people are your closest relatives and friends. But if you're going to grow, you have to get rid of people in your life or limit contact with people in your life that are going to bring you down. And again, a lot of times they don't realize they're doing it. And sometimes it takes just a strict talking to, like, hey, I'm into this. You can be supportive or not, but by not being supportive, you're pushing me away. And sometimes if you're not really tight with that person, you're just like, oh, you're the one who's going to make fun of me for trying to get ahead in life. All right, you're not adding any value. I'm not going to hang out with you for a few months or a few years. I see people that I met years and years ago or that I was friends with years and years ago who weren't supportive. And frankly, they made their bed. They're sleeping in it now. And I can see them and have fun and have a drink or whatever. But I realize all the time that we're never really going to be that close again, because every time we hang out, I just kind of get a whiff of jealousy, envy, and the fact that they kind of wish, they yearn for the days where they were able to put themselves above me realistically and believe it. And that's a problem for somebody who's trying to constantly move forward in life, because you don't want to be slotted in other people's comfort zones where they're comfortable having you.
Yeah, you make some really great points. And back when the people who were telling you not to do this, how did you keep your mindset so that you were focused on the task at hand? Are you just a very intrinsically motivated person? Or
stubborn is the word you're looking for. But you know what? Honestly, one of the things that I sort of live by now is protect your mind, and that's good in business. It's good in relationships. And what I mean by that is, you might be launching a business, and a lot of people say that's not going to work. You're not going to be able to do that. You got to look at the source of that. If somebody's saying that's not going to work, are they people who run businesses? Are they people in a similar niche? If so, then you might want to listen. Are they people that have had a 9-to-5 job and they're telling you not to bother striking out on your own as an entrepreneur because you're not going to make it? That might be their insecurities talking, and you probably should not apply those to yourself. I think we all have enough of our own insecurities. We don't need to borrow them from other people. And so the way that I protect my mind is either limit contact with people who are going to be naysayers or doubters, and listen to the ones that deserve to be listened to. Also think about why people are saying what they're saying. So if your mom says something like, oh, it's good that you're starting your own business, but don't quit your job and don't get too excited. That's what my parents said when I started The Art of Charm, and now I make more than the partners on Wall Street that I used to work for that were older than me now. So they weren't saying that because my parents are bad and they don't want me to succeed. They were saying that because they didn't want to see me fall flat on my face, disappointed, crying, and living in their basement. I understood that's where they were coming from, and so I took that as a sign of love, not as a sign of naysayerism, to coin a term right now. And I realized that doesn't necessarily mean it's good advice. I remember my first entrepreneurial venture, if you will. I remembered it earlier today. I was in 3rd grade or 4th grade, and I printed up a newspaper that was funny. And it was about things that were happening at school and making fun of certain things that were happening at school without, not like other kids or whatever, but just like teacher stuff and funny inside jokes. And my dad said, I don't think you should charge 10 cents for that newspaper, because why would kids buy a fake newspaper for 10 cents when they can buy a real newspaper for 25 cents? And for me, at age 9, it was so obvious. Why would any kid buy a real newspaper? It's the most boring thing in the world. Who wants to read the Wall Street Journal? It's still boring, and I'm 34. But a newspaper about things that were going on and relevant to our lives, it was a no-brainer. And of course, I sold tons of them, and I made like $10, which for an 8-year-old kid is basically a fortune. I sold copies to the whole school. I had my dad printing them at Ford where he worked. So, I mean, it was just so funny. But he didn't say that because he's like, oh, my dumb son's going to start an entrepreneurial venture. Let me nip that in the bud. He just didn't want me to be disappointed if nobody bought it and then come home crying, because he cared about me. So you have to look at the audience where criticism comes from and figure out why. And sometimes it's to bring you down, and sometimes it's to protect you. But in both of those cases, you probably should not listen unless it's what I would say is qualified criticism. If you ask me, how do I make my podcast more popular? And I tell you to do something, it would probably be unwise of you to then go, Jordan doesn't know anything about this. Why should I listen to him? because this is my area of expertise. However, if you ask me how to grow better tomatoes and I give you some off-the-cuff advice, don't listen to me. I've never grown a tomato in my life, and if I did, it would be an accident.
Good points. That's great. Thank you. I would love to also dig into the charisma, just as far as like, and I know you said that you can't really give across the board advice, but if you had to give the top 3 things that people could do in a general way to improve their charisma, what would they be?
Sure. So rather than give you like 3 top tips, I'm going to give you one drill, concept, and exercise that will help you right out of the box, audio only format. And if we have enough time, which it looks like we will, I will give you something to layer onto that once you get good at it. So a lot of people think that first impressions are made, and first impressions, let's say, this is an obviously indispensable element of charisma and personal magnetism. If you have a bad one, very uncharismatic. If you have a good one, can be the beginnings of personal charisma, right? So that goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway. We know that our first impression is actually not made when we open our mouth and decide to make a first impression. Our first impressions are made when we become a blip on other people's radar. In other words, when they notice us. And so that's a really powerful point, because I'll give you some context so that you can sort of viscerally believe this instead of looking at the scientific research, which no one's interested in. Say you're a guy or a group of girls, and I'll give both perspectives, and there's a group of girls sitting at a bar and a group of guys coming into the bar to obviously, meet people, be social, whatever. The girls are on their phone sharing vacation photos, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. And the guys walk in, they notice the girls, and they go to a table in the corner, they sit down, they order a couple drinks, they pretend to watch the basketball game, all the while shooting some glances back and forth at the girls. The girls, of course, saw the guys come in, thought they were kind of cute, went back to sharing photos, thinking eventually they would probably end up talking with those guys. Well, the guys order another round of drinks. They're still pretending to watch basketball. One of the gutsier guys, or one of the guys who has an empty stomach and the booze hit first, walks over to the bar, does a little flyby, scopes the girls closer, maybe throws a weird smile or a glance, orders another couple of drinks from the bartender, goes back to his friends. Finally, 2 of the girls get up to go to the bathroom. One girl sits there holding down the fort, watching people's jackets and making sure their seats stay. And she's on Instagram or Facebook or whatever the kids use these days, Snapchat. And she's standing there, and one of the guys goes, "Perfect, now's my time." So he pounces, goes over there and goes, "Hey, what are you guys drinking? What are you guys doing? What do you get, da-da-da?" And the girl's like, knowing she's totally been pounced on because her friends are gone, kind of already made up her mind about this guy. And Rachel, you've been in this situation. Your first impression of these guys was made 20 minutes ago when they walked in the door, didn't say anything, got a little bit drunk, kept looking at you, still didn't do anything. Now it's too late. Now the first impression is, this guy can only be social when he's drunk. That's not a really big charismatic indication, not a big turn on, not a great first impression. So of course she gives him the whole, it's girls' night out, nice meeting you, and he goes back to his friends, mumbling something under his breath about the quality of the girls, or that girls are hard, or he doesn't get it, or whatever. And his friends rib him for saying the wrong thing and not being cool enough to get their attention, of course. But the problem isn't what he said. No matter what came out of his mouth, how clever or how dull, it wouldn't have mattered, because the first impression was made when the girls noticed him, noticed his nonverbal communication, body language, the way he sits, stands, walks, and interacts with other people. And we know this because we've all done this to other people. If you don't believe you do it, go downstairs, walk a lap around your block if you live in a city, and notice what you think when you see other people. Are you judging them at all? And if you're honest with yourself and even remotely self-aware, the answer is yes. You have to. It's evolutionary psychology. This is what protects us from harm and has for hundreds of thousands or millions of years of human evolution. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah,
Okay,
totally.
So we know that first impressions are made when other people notice us. So since we can't speak to everyone that we know right away, or that we're making a first impression on right away that we don't know, what we know is that our body language, our nonverbal communication, is what makes up the vast majority of that first impression. And so what this means for us is that if our nonverbal communication is good, good first impression. If our nonverbal communication is bad, bad first impression. Both good and bad first impressions are ours to recover from or, maintain. But as you know, what's the old cliche? You never get a second chance to make a first impression.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that that's solid. And so the way that we do that is by great nonverbal communication. What is great nonverbal communication? Start with upright posture, In fact, if you're sitting or standing right now and you're not driving or you're not going to kill yourself or someone else, try this right now. Stand up straight, shoulders back, chest up, smile on your face. Don't exaggerate. You'll look like an idiot. But just relaxed, align your spine up, straight up, smile on your face, shoulders back. So most people are hunched from sitting, and also because a lot of people are taught to make themselves smaller over different sort of psychological issues that you won't get into here. And now I want you to sort of remember what this feels like, and then every time you walk through a doorway for the rest of the month, I want you to do this exact same thing. And so what this will do is build this posture, this upright, open body language as a habit. And if you stand with your arms crossed, stop doing that too. So why we're doing this is because if we just decide, all right, I'm going to that networking event and I'm going to have great first impressions. What was that thing Jordan said? All right, open positive body language. The problem with that is if you try to remember it in the moment, it's going to be rigid, stiff, and you're going to be constantly micromanaging it throughout the rest of the evening. If you build it as a habit by doing it every time you walk through a doorway for the next rest of the month, you are going to not only do this automatically, but it's going to be so internalized you'll never have to think about it again, which means that every time you walk into a room, going through a doorway, you're going to have great, open, positive body language and a smile on your face. This is huge because it causes not only your mind follows the body and the body follows the mind. We know that. That's sound science. It causes other people to treat you differently. And when people treat you differently, it starts what we call a positive feedback loop, which is people treat you like a higher status individual, like you're friendly, outgoing, etc., more confident. You start to be that way. This isn't woo-woo. It's not wishful thinking. It's not law of attraction or any BS like that. This is science, psychology. It's just applied in a very easy way for you to hack so that you don't have to remember to be confident, which is, by the way, nearly impossible next time you need it.
Great points. So you said there's something that you're going to layer on top of it. Was that the doorway exercise, or did you have something?
I got more, Rachel.
Bring it on.
So now that, let's say, a couple weeks go by, you're doing this, it's automatic, you've had a few slip-ups because everyone does. Now, you're going, this is great, but I still feel a little bit shy. I feel a little bit like, I'm not really making good eye contact is usually the next stumbling block that people run into. So what I tell them to do, and what our team at the Art of Charm, for our coaching team, when people, of course, come through to our programs here in LA, what we tell them to do is to notice the eye color of everyone that you talk to for the next couple of weeks. So don't try to do both of these at once. It's a really common issue that people try to just tackle all of this at once, and then they forget to do one thing or the other. And it's such a massive buzzkill because you can make such good progress, but then you try to layer it on. It's like the guy who's like, I'm going to lose 80 pounds this month, goes to the gym every day for 8 hours, and it's like, I hate the gym. Don't do that to yourself. Baby steps. So notice the eye color of everyone you talk to for the next couple of weeks. And what this will do is not only make your eye contact better, but it will avoid that sort of creepy trap where people go, no, I've been working on my eye contact. And we've all met these people where they're like overly intense and we can't quite figure out why. A lot of it has to do with eye contact, and a lot of times the reason people do it is because they're looking to be, I want to be really present. So they just like stare at you really intently without blinking, and it's freaking weird. And a lot of times shy people who are trying to break out of that shell, they'll have a tough time with eye contact. So they're just like, I'm never going to break your gaze. And it's a weird thing because people don't automatically assume your best intentions. They just assume that the way that they're feeling around you is the way that you are. And that's a problem. If you're making the people you talk to feel nervous, they don't think, oh, this person must be working on his first impression in nonverbal communication, and he's a little nervous because he has social anxiety, or she's feeling a little off today. So maybe that's why I'm feeling nervous, because I'm mirroring them. We don't think that. We think, this guy's creepy because I feel weird, bye, and then they run away. And that happens all of the time. And that's because we have an agenda that doesn't match all of our nonverbal communication, even if that agenda is try to have better nonverbal communication, try to give a better first impression. That type of thing, when you're micromanaging it, when you're conscious of it, it comes across as incongruent and inauthentic, and it freaks people out. So that's why it's important to internalize this stuff. The other thing the eye contact drill does is, since you're forcing yourself just to sort of take it to an academic level and note their eye contact color, it's a very logical exercise instead of make eye contact with them and do it better. since you're just noticing the eye color, by the time you kind of remember to get nervous about it, the anxiety starts to pass already because you're looking them in the eye already and it's not weird. And then you can do whatever you want. If you don't look at them in the eye for the next 5 years, fine. But at least try to make that first initial impression with good eye contact. And a great way to hack yourself around the anxiety is just notice their eye color. And it'll come across totally natural, and eventually you're just going to start looking people in the eye and having conversations, and you're not going to notice that you're not freaked out by it or becoming shy or looking at the floor or avoiding eye contact anymore. And even people who don't think they have a problem with eye contact often don't give very charismatic eye contact just because we're not taught to do it when we're younger. Different cultural backgrounds have different rules regarding eye contact. Social status plays a huge factor. There's a million different things behind it. So hacking it from the results end forward is always positive.
Awesome points. For you, I'm curious because I know you're more trained than most people on these different communications. Are there things, like advanced things, that when you're looking at somebody for the first time that you're looking for?
Me personally?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I've done a lot of training at AOC, at Art of Charm. We get a lot of intelligence agents, entrepreneurs, salespeople, and clients that are even college students, of course. But we get a lot of those folks in here, special operations. So I get a unique look at some of their training as well. And I bring some of the good stuff back to the Art of Charm. Me and AJ both do that. And so what I've learned to do from different sources of people who have really good training is essentially read people in a really adept way that you don't always want. So sometimes you'll notice somebody and you'll be like, this person doesn't like something about me or somebody that I'm with. Let's figure out what that is. And it starts to become this weird game that you play with yourself where you're sort of reading everybody. And it can be a constant struggle to stay present sometimes because reading interactions between other people can become much more interesting than the conversation you might be having. But it's also quite fascinating. So I look at combinations of posture, eye contact, vocal tonality, rate of speech, a lot of the things that we teach at our Charm workshops, to look at how somebody's relating to somebody else, status indicators, submission indicators, personality quirks that actually are the result of people trying to micromanage the way they're perceived by others. All that stuff is super fascinating. And I've spent years and years going out with clients and by myself and with friends just reading other people. And that's been a fascinating exercise. And of course, now I do it in ways that are a little bit higher stakes, and I teach Art of Charm clients to do it in ways that are a little bit higher stakes, depending on if they're from military, special forces, or they just want to meet someone special.
So you mentioned sometimes you notice people don't like a certain thing, and that was actually one of my questions for you was, do you ever worry that people don't like you? I'm just curious from your kind of, I guess, perspective on reading people and stuff.
It used to be, so I went through this weird phase where it was like, I want everyone to like me. And, as a kid, we all go through that too. And then after a while, it was like, I don't even care, which was a huge lie. And so that's why there's this thing that a lot of men go through where they're like, oh, I don't even give a crap what people think about me. And what that says when I hear that is, I care so much about what other people think about me that it's ruining my whole life. And it's the worst thing about myself. So, because there's a whole movement of guys who are like, oh, I don't even care. And it means they basically have given up on getting other people to like them. So they just pretend like they don't care. And that's very common among immature men, especially. And then as we get older, and it's part of just the maturation process, but I think it's been accelerated a little bit with me and gone in weird waves. Because after a while, I was able to really read whether or not people were interested or not interested, polite, or not, really see through the BS. And that can drive you insane because you start to be able to read it in others before you're able to actually correct the impression that you're leaving on others. And that is crummy because you start to notice oh, a lot of these people don't really like me, but I have no idea what to do about it. Or they're not really feeling me on this one, and I don't know how to fix it. And that's a problem because, man, it's a really uncomfortable. It's almost like ignorance is bliss. I'd rather not know. But then you become able to sort of be consciously competent of the impressions you're making on other people. You start to internalize positive first impressions, and then you no longer have to worry about it. And then you come across full circle where you go, not everyone's always going to like me. I can't always manage it. I can only manage it where I can manage it, and everybody else doesn't matter. That's a tough concept to internalize, That's more or less where I am now, though. I realize sometimes people like pizza, sometimes people don't like pizza. It's not my job to sell everybody on liking pizza. And the analogy here, just in case you're not paying attention, I'm the pizza.
Thanks for clarifying. Another question that I had, this is kind of switching gears a little bit, but some people who might be hearing about this might feel like it's exhausting to talk to new people, and there's a small talk and sizing each other up, especially at networking events and all this, and it really can be super exhausting. So what advice would you have for those people?
Yeah, it's funny. I talk about this quite a bit. A lot of people actually have, like, the newest sort of excuse is, oh, I'm an introvert, so I can't network. And it's like, okay, but the truth is, introvert versus extrovert, it's kind of like a chic new vogue excuse to be shy, but it really doesn't matter because medically or scientifically speaking, introvert versus extrovert, it doesn't have any bearing on your social abilities whatsoever. So it's kind of a cool excuse for people to be like, I'm not going to work on my social skills because I'm a natural introvert. That has nothing to do with shyness. It's completely different. So for a lot of folks, yes, it can be exhausting and it does take a lot of work, but nobody said that networking and getting rapport with people was an effortless process. That, like any other skill, absolutely requires practice, often requires coaching and a lot of work. So when people shy away from that, I'm kind of thinking, so you're going to spend years working on this quote unquote business that you have, and you're going to ignore the single most important determinant of success, which is your ability to create relationships with your customers, vendors, and partners. That's fine, but you are probably going to fail. People who are not good at creating relationships are very rarely successful. And yes, you can try to think of all the examples you want, and I'll show you a company that either succeeded in spite of itself or got into so much money that they were able to hire those people, and those people didn't steal the idea and start the business for themselves.
Yeah, I know you mentioned in Shailene Johnson's podcast that you feel like you need to make in-person relationships versus just internet, right?
Yeah, in fact, anybody who's not doing that is at a massive disadvantage.
So how would you recommend that people go and talk to, for example, I'm about to go to traffic and conversion. Are you going to be there?
No, I'm not going to that.
Oh,
okay. I don't really do affiliate marketing or anything like that. I outsource all of the marketing because it doesn't have good return for my time specifically, but I do agree that stuff is important.
Yeah, awesome. I know for me, I was like going back and forth if I wanted to go, because one of the things is I've been doing internet marketing for so long now, and I've met so many people, and I don't remember a lot of them. And I remember last year I went, like, oh, I was telling someone, so nice to meet you. I said, oh, like we met a while ago. And then I felt like the rest of the time I was just having to be like, oh, hi, everyone. Like I knew everybody because I didn't want to offend anybody. Oh my gosh, it was super exhausting. So actually, what would you say to me about that? How could I make it not so exhausting?
Sure, yeah. Just to be clear, I know I just got done saying in-person relationships, and you're like, cool, are you going to this big networking thing? And I was like, nah, but I am sending people to it. I should just be super clear. I'm sending people to that summit. But, making it less exhausting it's kind of like running. If you talk to a runner and you're like, hey, we got to run 3 miles. They're like, oh, that's easy. If you talk to somebody who doesn't run, they're like, man, I am not running 3 miles. Are you insane? I've got to train for that, and I'm going to throw up and everything. So you think about that when you think about fitness, but we don't think about that when we think about emotional stamina. And it's trainable, not to pick on you, but to expect that you're going to go from 0 to 60 by going to traffic and conversion. And maybe I shouldn't pick on you. I don't know your personal relationship development skill set, but if you're the kind of person who only networks at these big events 3 times a year, it's no wonder it's exhausting. You're not practiced. You're going in with tons of rust. By day 3, when you kick the rust off, or day 2, or even day 1, you've already spent all that time and energy just kind of getting back to the normal state where somebody who maybe is a little bit more social or a little bit more personal in their relationships would be already. So it's something that consistently needs to be worked at. You don't see a lot of triathletes going, oh, yeah, I'm not going to go to the gym at all or watch my diet until 3 months before the competition, and then I got to train. They're training year-round. They're staying in shape. Just like you need to stay in physical shape, you need to stay in networking shape or emotional shape by consistently building those relationships. It's not something you can turn on when you need it. And that's what a lot of people try to do, which is why they find networking so exhausting, and also why they find it so difficult because they put their skill set away for 3 more months waiting for the affiliate summit or whatever the next thing is.
That's a great point. So how do you recommend that people consistently train? Like go out to events near your house, bars, or what?
Absolutely. Go out to events near your house, organize things near you. I mean, I don't necessarily know where everybody listening is located, but if you're say you're in a marketing niche or any professional niche, start a meetup for that. It can be at a restaurant or a bar. Be the organizer. It forces you to be social. It also puts you at the center of that hub for that networking group. And even if 2 people show up, that's fine. It's about making industry connections. It's not about becoming the most famous soccer mom in your town. But these are great ways to hone and maintain skill sets over time.
Awesome. Great. What is a specific action step that you take on a daily basis or a very consistent basis to make your life better?
Well, aside from physical activity and making sure that I get enough sleep, I make sure that my quality of sleep is high. So I turn off or turn down electronic devices until late at night, with certain exceptions. Lately, I've been terrible at it because I've had a lot of stuff going on. But time management, I religiously follow my calendar. And by that, I mean everything is in 15-minute blocks. And if it's not on the calendar, it's dead to me in terms of an event. I don't spontaneously turn around and go, yeah, I'll do that, and then spend 3 hours in the middle of the afternoon sucked into a non-productive activity because I made a spur-of-the-moment decision. I book everything in advance, which gives me plenty of leeway to prioritize things that are not going to have any return on investment. And I know that sounds ridiculous and anal, but the problem is I work from home, and I know a lot of people that also work from home. And I know huge amounts of people that are just massively unproductive working from home, can't get anything done. And I know a handful of extremely productive people that work from home. And there are certain skill sets that they have in common, such as time management, managing their physical activity as a priority, things like that. And I know that a lot of the unproductive people, they're the ones who usually think, oh, no, I can totally do this. I don't need a calendar. I can remember that, or I can do this, or I can play this by ear. It's a lot of the people that think they're pros are the people that discard the prep, when really a pro realizes that the value of prep is in the preparation itself. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, I schedule everything too, so I'm totally with you. I'm curious, how long do you work every day? Like, what are your hours usually?
Well, it depends. I mean, some days I work 10, other days I'll work 14, but it depends. I mean, it doesn't really feel like work. You know, oftentimes I'll be brainstorming new curriculum. I'll be networking with cool people that are, hanging out with friends is what I call it. I don't even call it networking. Making new friends. I'll be working on shows, which are fun. I'll be doing media opportunities. So, like right now, I've been working since 8 a.m. and it's actually closer to 3 p.m. in the afternoon. But really, it feels like my day just started, not in a bad way. I'm not crashing. I'm not tired. I'm just stoked. Everything I do is fun, and if it's not, I outsource it.
Awesome. What is something in your experience that you feel like people don't share about improving themselves just because it's not super sexy?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the calendar thing is like the most unsexy, because people are always like, you're so productive. What's your top productivity tip? And I'm like, calendar. And they're like, no, I need like a real piece of software, like a really cool, hack. And I'm like, use your calendar for everything, not just for your appointments, not just for your calls, not just for your shows. Schedule your exercise in there. That's why exercise gets done, because that's what time it is. It's exercise time. It's not an hour to do whatever I want. Maybe I should go to the gym. Nah, and then you watch TV and eat pancakes. No, schedule everything on your calendar, synchronize it with your phone, set up alarms, that type of thing will double your business if you're not doing it right now, at least. Because most people won't do it. They think they've got it. They think they've got the system under control. They think they can manage it in their head. And my message is this: if you can manage your whole calendar in your head, you don't have anything going on. Because if you just have a couple appointments per day and the rest is you sitting around doing stuff, it should still go on your calendar so that things get done, things get prioritized and reprioritized. If you're not doing this, you are wasting time. You are wasting time figuring out what you're going to do next. You're wasting time deciding on the fly what the priorities are. Because you may have seen this research, but we know now that our willpower and our thinking power is limited. As the day goes on, it wears thinner. So by 8 p.m., if I've got something on the calendar that says do this, do this, do this, I know that it's going to get done. But if I just have a bunch of stuff to do and it's 8 p.m., I might just be like, screw it, I'm tired. because I don't even want to think about what the next task is, what the priority is, and how to get it done. But I don't need to. It's in my calendar. It's been there for 3 weeks or at least 24 hours. I did it the night before. All of that stuff is set up the night before. Nothing changes on the fly unless it absolutely has to. And that saves me a ton of cognitive power that I use on other things throughout the day. And for people who think that's weird, that's fine. Go read some journal studies and find out that it's completely science-based. It will change the way that you work.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. I love how passionate you sound about it because it's totally true. Like the more decisions that we take out of our life, just the more that we can just follow things that are right in front of us. Exactly like you're saying, it just makes life so much easier and we are way more productive.
Yeah, I am passionate about it, and the reason is because of this. A lot of people will email or call, or I'll just meet them at something, and they're like, oh, that's too regimented, blah, 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 this, that, and the other thing. And I'm thinking, okay, that's fine, but there's science that shows that this is right, and also scoreboard. You work in your parents' basement, which is nothing wrong with that, but don't argue with somebody about productivity when you're not that as productive as that person. If I talk to Richard Branson, Mark Cuban, and they tell me something about productivity, I'm not going to be like, well, my experience says X, Y, Z. I'm going to shut the hell up and probably do things their way because they have the scoreboard in their favor. And I think now it's almost like a millennial thing where you get a blue ribbon for participation and for voicing your opinion. It's like, no, show me the science, show me the research. If it doesn't exist, then I'll go with my gut and or with what anecdotally has been working. But if somebody has more results, I want that. And essentially that's kind of the way that we do business at AOC. We go by results, not on what maybe should be the case. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they like to hide their head in the sand because looking at results is too taxing and quite frankly kind of scary. It's much easier to just go, well, I think this might work, and it's certainly more comfortable to do it that way. And then they do it that way, and a year later they wonder why they're not as far along as somebody else who's tested something.
Absolutely. Well, Jordan, this has been so good. I feel like we covered so much ground from just charisma, specific things that people could do, the time management piece, just so much stuff that people can walk away with. You gave lots of practical things that I love. I love making everything grounded. So thank you so much. And can you let people know where they can go to find out more about you?
Yeah, sure. Go to the Art of Charm podcast. You're already listening to a podcast, so here we are. Check it out. It's free. Don't buy anything yet. Just check out what we offer for free and see how you like it. And then, of course, you can always email me, jordan@theartofcharm.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you again.
You're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for listening to A Better Life. You can find all show notes for this episode at rachelrofe.com. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe so you can automatically get access to all new shows. Let's also connect. Just go onto Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram /RachelRofe, and we can talk there. The opinions of all guests here are their own, and I'm not necessarily endorsing any of them. I do want to give you perspective.